Good afternoon and welcome to Biztech Asian Midday Marketwatch. Our guest today is Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank, coming out of Singapore. Hi Vishnu, great to have you on the show today.
Good afternoon, Brian. Always good to be here. And thanks for having me on the show this Monday.
Now, Vishnu, before we get your insights, let's take a quick look at how crypto markets are performing, and then after that, regional stock markets. We're going to start with the crypto markets. We've got Bitcoin, which is at 57,240. It's down 2.45%. Ethereum is at 4,168. It's down 3.75%. Now, across the region, if we look at the Straits Times Index, it's at 3,240.3. It's up 0.25%. The KLSC is at 1,569. It's up 0.15%. The Shanghai is at 3,583.51. It's up 0.65%. The ASX is at 7,691.8. It's down 0.49%. The Nikkei is at 29,787.5. It's up 0.14%. The Hang Seng is at 24,930. It's down 0.47%. And rounding up the numbers, we've got the Kospi, which is just above 3,000, 3,006.12. It's up 1.18%. Now, Vishnu, what's your view on how markets have performed this afternoon?
Well, I think it's really mixed markets, and depending on how you cut it up, there's something for you to worry about or to cheer about. And here's how it's going. In the microcosm of Asia, I think the increasing sense that China would be much more guarded about tightening, and in fact, at the margin may indulge in targeted loosening given the economic deceleration is perhaps a reason for markets to feel some relief, if not even joy. And the more perverse version on a global basis is this: the resurgence of COVID in Europe on one hand is a cause for worry. So that should actually set back sentiments, cast a little bit of gloom, so on and so forth. But for others who look at it from a policy angle and think, hang on, the ECB may be pushed back further in terms of normalization, and maybe, just maybe, even the Fed may show some restraint in normalization or tightening. So these guys could be hoping for a prolonged liquidity boost in markets, and that perversely leads to half-full version of it.
Now, so obviously the ECB's caution was justified, especially as you correctly mentioned that the reemergence of COVID across the region. But if we look at ASEAN itself and the Asia Pacific region, economies are opening up, but at the same time, we're setting the stage then potentially for a different the next wave of COVID infections. What are your thoughts in terms of how the economies will perform for the rest of the year?
I think we are in a place where there are no easy solutions. And I think one way to think about it is, having reached significant vaccination rates, the reflex to remain shut no longer is as justified. So there must be some kind of reopening subject to reasonable measures to safeguard as well, which is why I think the vaccinated travel lanes are the ones taking off very quickly first. But it does beg wider questions about the duration or rather the half-life of vaccine efficacy and what that means in terms of newer variants, so on and so forth. So Europe is really a cause of concern, at least in terms of what we do not know about how higher vaccinations and new variations would interact to give rise to risks in the region. But clearly, much of the region has suffered from remaining closed, particularly those with very high tourism dependence like Thailand, to a lesser extent even Philippines. And I think the option of remaining closed on the grounds of caution is eroding away and arguably has got a shorter half-life than vaccine efficacy.
Now, this week, Vishnu, it's a short week in the US because it's Thanksgiving weekend. So that's a long weekend. what are the events and data points we should look out for that could move markets?
I think one of the core centers of gravity this week would be a long forgone event, which is the FOMC minutes. So we both know that the FOMC minutes would go through the motion of saying, yes, we have started taper, $15 billion a month of step down. But that's not what markets will focus on. They'll focus on two things. One is it's going to be used as a rallying point to see where the Fed goes from here. So it'll be where you can look at the details and see how were they all positioned. Are they looking like they are poised to turn a lot more hawkish? And that's against the backdrop of two key speakers last week. One was Fed's Bullard. He started off talking about hastening the pace of taper so that they can wind down quantitative easing by March next year rather than June. So that's really doing a much faster pace of taper. And he's the voting member next year. So it does matter that he said it. And the interesting thing is the Vice Chair Clarida has also weighed in and pretty much agreed, even though his timeline is somewhere around April. So same difference. We are looking at significantly faster taper. And if in the minutes it comes out, or there's a sense that there may be some currency around this view, we could see U.S. Treasury yields reacting to the upside, with the dollar perhaps also gaining strength, particularly given that the euro may be restrained by COVID. So in a short Thanksgiving week, we could still have a lot of focus on what's happening in the US, and around that, crowding around that center of gravity would be the core PCE numbers, so the Fed's preferred measure of underlying core inflation. That's one. And the second read of US GDP, though that's really rear view mirror, and rear view mirror objects may appear smaller than they are, but that's beside the point.
Now, Vishnu, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Now, we've been speaking to Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank, on Biztech Asian Midday Marketwatch. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video and podcast will be on our various social media platforms, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please subscribe, like our various platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.